In today's video, we talk about how to give your photos a cinematic look. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we're talking about something that is in fashion quite a bit at the moment, and that is how to give your photos a cinematic look. And I realize that is a term that gets thrown around a lot these days, particularly with filmmakers. So people that shoot videos, they're always talking about, make your footage look more cinematic. But it's something that also translates into photographs, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Now, if you're not familiar with the term cinematic, it comes from the word cinema, and what it implies is that you're trying to make something look high-end, just like you would a movie that you see in the cinema. So next time you're watching a movie, just try and stop for a second and analyze what it is that you're watching. In particular, just pay attention to things like the color palette, the contrast ratio, things like that. All of those things put together are going to end up in a look, okay? And typically that is a look that is trying to emulate some sort of film stock from the past. And these looks don't have to be accurate. If you think about a lot of the movies, for example, that are shot in Mexico, for some reason they show Mexico with this really orange sky. And if you've been to Mexico, you know that it doesn't look that way. If you look at the original Matrix movie, it's all done in sort of with this green tint over the top of it. So it's not meant to look accurate. It's just meant to give the film a look. And that's exactly the same thing that we're doing, but we're doing it with photos. So what I'm going to try and do is share with you my thought process behind the way that I edit images when I'm trying to get this cinematic look. So again, it doesn't have to be accurate. It just has to be a look that you like. So think about it almost like putting on a preset on top of your photographs. A lot of the times those presets don't look natural, but they are a really good look. So we're doing the same type of thing, but we're trying to emulate some of the things that we've seen in movies. So I'm gonna grab a few images and I'm gonna go do the edit live on screen for you so you can see exactly what I'm thinking when I do these edits. But please understand, this is not the way to do it. This is just a way to do it. There's a million ways to do it, and your way is going to be different to mine. So it's all subjective. At the end of the day, your edit looks exactly the way that you want it to look, and mine is going to look different to yours. But understand how I'm thinking about it so that maybe you can come up with your own look. And then at the end, I'm going to save the edit as a preset and I'm going to make it available to you. Now, you may or may not know, I am more of a profile guy rather than a preset guy, but I'm going to give it to you as a preset this time so that you can see what sliders changed when you apply the preset to your own images. Now you can feel free to then convert that into a profile if you like. I made a video about that last week and I'll link to it somewhere in here. But initially I am giving it to you as a preset because I want you to see how the sliders change in order to get that look.
Okay, so here we are inside of Lightroom. And again, just before we get started, I just want to remind you, this is not the way to do it. This is just a way to do it. This is the way that I do it, okay? So just take inspiration from this video and come up with your own techniques. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I went out and took a couple of night cityscape shots, knowing that I was going to make this video. And I've just picked a few images from that night. And when I look at this, one of the things that I like to get inspiration from is I use Pinterest a lot in order to bring up frames from movies that I'm trying to sort of relate my images to. And in this case, the thing that came up or the thing that came to mind the most was the movie Blade Runner, the original movie. And if you go into Pinterest or you Google images of that movie, you get these sort of images. Just ignore all the ads in there, but you get this really sort of images that are very sort of very contrasty, very colorful. It's exaggerated, and this is the kind of inspiration that I'm looking for when I'm looking at the edit that I'm going to put today. Okay, so if you have a look at this, the colors are everything just looks sort of fake, okay, but it looks kind of cool. If you look at this one over here, for example, this looks very, very cool. So that's sort of it's not exactly what we're going for, but it is inspiration for the kind of look that I'm looking for today, okay, because this changes all the time. So the first thing that I do is I look at my image. Let's start off with this one here, and if I'm looking at this image right now, I can tell you that that's exactly what it looked like. Okay, so it's an accurate representation of the scene, but that's not what we're going for. We're going for something a little bit sort of futuristic, surreal, and exaggerated. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is the color temperature. I always start with the color temperature. And this one here is right in the middle because it is correct. So it's neither here nor there. And so for this one here, I am going to just bring it up a little bit, and I'm going to bring it up to just about 3400. It's just a tiny little bit, but if you have a look at these lights, this light exhibition here in the middle, if I let me just reset this so you can have a look at that. That looks kind of white, so I just want to bring that up a little bit so that I get a bit of a yellow tint to it, a warmer tint to it. Then I am going to play with the tint, and with the tint I'm just going to bring it down just a tiny little bit to bring in more greens. Green tends to go well with this futuristic sort of night scenes. If you think of the Matrix and even Blade Runner, there's a lot of green that is introduced into the photograph, and that comes from the old fluorescent tubes that used to emit a green sort of tint to the light. So I bring my tint down just a tiny little bit. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up my exposure just a little bit. Okay, so not too much. I'm going to go about there we go, 0.55. That's what I'm going to do. Then this is going to bring up a little bit of definition inside on the clouds here so that I can retain that. The next thing I want to do is the contrast, and again, I'm not looking for realism here. I'm looking for a sort of a special effect. So I'm going to be quite harsh with this. I'm going to bring this right up to maybe somewhere like, there we go, probably about 63. Okay. Now, when you do that, you start losing a lot of definition in the highlights. So what I want to do is bring down the highlights. In this case, I'm going to bring it right down. Probably you can see maybe even around about like 70. There we go. Let's go to 73. Okay, but you can pick up this really nice sort of details there in the lights, that greenish sort of tint, which looks really cool. And again, I think you normally associate that with futuristic sort of scenes. Now, the other thing that I want to do is I want to bring up the shadows, because when I increase the contrast, then I'm losing some details in the shadows. So let's bring the shadows up a little bit, okay? And in fact, we're going to go to, let's see, maybe about there. Let's go to 49 on the shadows. And now the whites, let's see. Could probably bring that down just a tiny little bit, I think. I'm going to bring that down to about minus 35. Okay. And now the blacks, I want to bring the blacks up a little bit, and that's going to sort of bring back almost like an HDR look to it. Okay. As you can see, you bring back a lot of detail, but it doesn't blow out the highlights anymore now, okay? Because you're controlling the highlights through the highlight slider. So we're going to bring the blacks probably about, I think about there. I think what is that? That's about 56. So we're going to leave it at 56. Now, the other thing that I like to do is I like to play with the dehaze slider. That's this one here, just underneath clarity. I prefer to use that rather than clarity, because clarity, I think, desaturates the scene a little bit too much. So with this one here, we can play around with it here, okay? But what we're going to do is I'm going to bring that up just a little bit to maybe about 44, I'm going to say, for 46 for this one here, okay? And then what I end up with is a really nice sort of looking scene that's very different to what we first started. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. The last thing that I normally like to do is I like to add a little bit of grain to my images. But before we do that, let's do something that I normally do at the very first as a very first step. But I forgot to show you this, and which is remove the chromatic aberration in the image, and also enable my profile correction. Okay, that's just going to straighten out a little bit the lens profile, and it's also going to get rid of any vignettes that exist outside on the corners of the images. Have a look at this. If I switch this off again, you're going to see that the corners of the images just around there and then around the bottom, okay, they're going to be very, very dark, and that's a vignetting effect that is caused just by the physical aspects of the lens and the sensor, and shouldn't happen, but it does. And so this little checkbox here, when you do that, it actually corrects the image and gets rid of that vignetting. And now that we've actually got rid of the vignetting, we can see that it is a little bit brighter down here. So maybe let's go back to our settings. We're going to probably maybe just change a couple of little things here. Let's go with let's bring the highlights down a little bit more even. I'm going to bring it down to 90, and let's see, we'll bring the shadows down just a tiny little bit. So the shadows are now 32, and I'm quite happy with that. So we're going to stick with that. And now, like I said before, we're going to go and add some grain to the image. And normally we don't really like grain, but in this case, because we're trying to make it look cinematic, film has grain. So this is going to add another layer on top of the image that is going to make it look somewhat imperfect, but it's going to add to it, which is a bit kind of weird, but it does work. So if you go under the effects tab in Lightroom, you'll see that you'll find the grain set slider in there. So we're going to bring that up, and we're going to be quite heavy with this because I really want to see the grain. So we're going to go into maybe like 72. Okay, and you're going to see it in there. Let me just zoom in a little bit. You can see all that grain there in the sky area there. If I take it off, the grain a lot of it will disappear. There's still a little bit of grain, but what we want to do is we want to add some artificial grain in there as well. And I think that that's going to give it a really cool sort of old film photograph look. In fact, I'm going to go a little bit heavier than that. I'm going to go to 50. Let's go to 59 on this. Okay. And so I'm really happy with that. And so I want to apply this to all images that have a similar type of style. So any night cityscape or night shots that I think could benefit from having this sort of effect. Just before we do that, I think I might just bring a little bit of the green tint down a little bit. In fact, I'm going to go into the magenta. I just want to see what it looks like. And you know what? Let's go there. So let me bring that back just a little bit. In fact, I think that +8. Okay, so again, it's all experimental. So you do what you think works well for your image. Okay. And let's bring that highlight down all the way. Actually, there you go. That highlight is now at -100. Okay, so we want to apply this to some of the other images, but we don't want to have to go through this whole process every time of having to copy all the sliders settings for each image. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a preset, and we do that by going up to the top of the in the menu bar. And I don't think you can see this because I'm not recording that part, but if you click on the develop menu up on the top toolbar, we can go down to new preset, and what we're going to do is we're going to call it and I'm going to put it under this group here called dance presets. We're going to call that let's call it cityscape, and we are going to make sure that all of these checkboxes are checked. Okay, what this does is you can include or exclude things from your preset when you're creating a preset, but we want everything in there. So let's create that. And now on the left hand side where your presets are under dance preset, I should have my cityscape, which is this one here. So let's try to apply this now to another image. So this other image is this is that thing that you saw in this image that we just worked on. This thing here, it actually looks like a giant sort of donut, and you can look through it. And so we've got that there. So let's apply this to this photograph. Let's apply the cityscape, and let's see what we end up with. And again, we end up with a completely different type of scene. Now, you may or may not like this. It may not work for for your shot, but you don't have to go and edit any of the sliders on the right hand side, because now if you find that it's a little bit too strong or a little bit too weak, we have this slider up here on the left, which is the top left hand corner, which is the intensity slider for presets. And this is something that's fairly new, and it's something that we've been wanting for a really long time. And what it allows you to do is you can wind down or wind up the preset itself. So let me show you what I mean. So if I thought that this was a little bit too strong, I could bring this down a little bit, okay, and apply a little bit less of that preset. That's taking it all the way to 0, but let's go to say 36, and that gives it just a touch of that preset. And just like that, I can also go all the way to 200, okay? So I can double up, if you like, and obviously that's too much for my taste, but it's just about knowing that you've got that slider there you can play with. So in this case, I'm not particularly fond of the preset, but I just wanted to show you how sometimes it just works and sometimes it doesn't work. I didn't plan this video, so I'm just going through this in real time with you. So let's pick a different photograph. I've got another one here. Now, the cool thing about this photograph is that it's a very sort of similar style to this one here that we just did before, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it to this one here. Now, again, if you were there at that time when I took this photograph, this is exactly what it looked like. But again, we're not going after that. We're going for that whole sort of futuristic city, and it's really cool because we've got these tracks here. We've got this water providing us with some reflections and some really good leading lines. All these tracks are pointing to the middle of the frame. So let's apply our filter, okay? And now we have a completely different looking scene, and this one I really like. Now it's a little bit dark for my taste, and I can go in there and just play around with the sliders to bring up the exposure. For example, I think in this case an exposure increase would probably do really well, like this one here, for example. I'd probably keep it over there, but potentially I think that this photo may be able to carry the preset a little bit more than the other images, right? So let's go into let's just reapply that again, okay? And we're going to bring it up a little bit more. Okay, we're really going to exaggerate that. Okay, so let's go to there we go. Let's go to 150. So that's 1.5 times what the normal preset would normally do. And again, let's bring the exposure up just a little bit more. Okay, and I think in this case it's worked out really, really well. Now it's very exaggerated. Okay, so again, it's subjective to what you like, but for my taste, I think that this kind of works. This works quite well. So let's do the same thing with here's one of the light rails systems in Sydney. So let's go in and apply the cityscape, and now that looks very, very different to before. Okay, so we're going to keep it there, and let's just wind it back down just a little bit. Actually, let's wind it right up actually. Again, you know, it's up to you. This I sort of like, but I think it's too bright now, so I'm going to bring it down just a little bit there, and this could potentially work. I don't think it works as well as the other image, but I think it can work. And finally, I've got just a plaque that was on the floor just near the Sydney Opera House. So let's apply it to this, and yeah, that could work. Let's give it a little bit more, in fact, right? That could potentially work. It's an interesting concept, interesting look, but yeah, I'm not sure that I really like it, but it's just about giving you some ideas about how to start thinking about getting something that looks a little bit more, you know, as they say, cinematic, because we know that in cinema they do this sort of things. I mean, we have seen movies in the cinema where streetscapes or cityscapes look like this, okay? And but at the time that you're watching it, you don't really realize that, you know, it's a very heavily saturated image with the white balance all over the place. You're sort of looking at a movie, so you don't realize it because you're invested in the story, the characters, the movie, the sound effects, the music, and all of that stuff. So you don't realize it, but it's much easier to do when you have just an image that's not moving, because then you start to notice all the things that you can do in order to make it look more cinematic. Sometimes you just cannot even explain why it looks more cinematic. You just know that it does. So anyway, I hope that this has been helpful. Again, go to Pinterest and have a look at some of the screenshots from your favorite movies that you're trying to emulate, and get inspiration from those movies, but don't lock yourself into any system that tells you that this is how you make a photo cinematic. There is no right or wrong way to do it. It's whatever you like, and so just experiment and see what you can come up with.
So that's it. Hopefully you found this video useful, and maybe you were able to pick up a couple of things that you didn't know before. If you have any questions though, leave them in the comment section below. That's the best place to get in touch with me. Otherwise, you can ping me on any of the usual social media platforms. And if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I make videos like this all the time to help you with your photography. So if you don't want to miss out on any of those, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I upload a new video. So that's everything for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.